Okay, we'll just mute everybody. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Welcome to the Keystone Big Book Study Workshop with the Program of Recovery. Maybe we're going to have some late starters. That's okay. We're up and running. We're getting things going. We're going to have a fun night tonight. We're going to kind of kick it off and kind of relax and kind of get into this process here, right? So where we're kind of left off last week is after the fear, which is a kind of interesting process. But to back up, what we're looking for, if you kind of go back to page 63, we'll kind of mute everybody there as we go along. I don't know who's all involved here, but if you kind of go back to 63, they talked about the top of their experience when you have to unmute yourself. Okay. So they talk about it's going to be one of those nights, eh? It's going to be one of those nights. It was really profound what I said there. So you guys, I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry you guys missed it, but it was profound. So I just thought it's going to be one of those nights. I should have brought more flowers, one of those situations. So we're at the inventory process tonight. We're getting into the sex inventory. Probably one of the... Well, it's all really confusing and misleading if you haven't been through it or been through it with somebody who kind of understands it, because we're stuck with our own ideas. And a lot of people, you hear people sometimes, the 4-step, the big boogeyman, right? Listen, you're not writing down anything you don't already know, right? You're involved in the whole thing. You're involved in the whole process, right? What we're looking for is what created it. What are the stumbling blocks? What are the things in ourselves that caused our problems? So on page 63, the introduction here, they talk about when we sincerely took such a position. And then they talk about their process and their experience with the process. And that's the most important part of this thing is, what is the experience with the process, right? Because they talk about lack of power is our dilemma. So we had to get access to this power, not only access, but to have somewhat of an experience with it that we see the benefit of it. It's kind of like back when drinking, right? After you felt the effects produced by alcohol, nobody had to explain it to you anymore, right? You were able to go on your own pursuit of happiness. Would you say that's a fair assumption? Right? Nobody had to talk you into it. The pursuit of happiness came, the promises and all that stuff came true. So that euphoria that came. So here, this is kind of like the same idea. Everybody around us has experienced something. And they say this experience is available to us, but more so, we need to have it if we're going to recover from alcoholism. Right? Because the never-ending story is step one, right? I'm just going to shut the door here 1 second. So the never-ending story is step one, the repeating of going back to something that I never intended to go back to. We've seen that all the way through the book. So what they talk about here is I'm making a decision to pursue this experience, right? Because I need to have this experience. If I don't have this experience where it's personal to me, then it won't sustain me for what's coming down the road. Right? And as we started getting into this thing, they really told us what the purpose of the 4-step was. And there's a couple things, and it's kind of like learning how to drive. When you drive your car, there's a whole bunch of things happening simultaneously, right? But yet you're still able to enjoy, hopefully, sitting in the driver's seat with the radio going, a nice breeze. And that's kind of like the process, like going through this. At first it's a little awkward and different and scary because we don't know and haven't had the experience with it. As we get more experience with it, the more relaxed we become in it. And later on they talk about step 11 where it becomes a working part of the mind. But you need to understand the mechanics and the spiritual application to get access to this power where it all kind of meshes together, that we could continuously have this experience and grow in understanding and effectiveness, right? It's like anything we do. Once you learn the basis of it, the more you practice it, the more you develop in it, the more you get better at it. And some things just become you don't even think about it anymore. and you just do certain things. They just come natural to do it, right? It's just kind of like eating food, chewing, right? And so like all that others is just natural. But sometimes when you're not paying attention, you're going to have problems. I don't know why I went there, but there you go. So anyways, so they talk about the purpose of the fourth step is to remove the blocks within us, right? That we find out that's created by us hanging on to blocked energy or things that stand in the way of this relationship with this life force that they call a God consciousness or access to power, the spirit of the universe, this thing that keeps us connected to the global energy field, right? That I call God. So whatever your experience with it is or conception, that's okay. But we need the bottom line is lack of power is our dilemma. I got to get access to this power. 64, they talk about the mechanics of learning a new process of taking inventory. They talk about a commercial inventory or a business inventory, the ability to assess what's happening in that business, to see what's working and not working, and to get rid of the things without regret. And we are to do the same thing with ourselves, but we don't have the mechanism within our mind to assess the values and the things that cause us problems. We don't have the capability of foresight. We have great hindsight, but foresight is not our strong suit, right? What are these things that like the repeat? Anybody have a repeating story here? They seem like they've dated the same person over and over. The same thing seems on happening at different intervals of their life with people, places, and things, and jobs, and community, and people, outlook, and attitude. Anybody have this reoccurring theme happening in their life? I think they talked about that in We Agnostics, right? Prey to misery and depression or the bedevilments. A lot of people think, oh, that's alcoholism. No, that's the human condition. We're not the only ones that suffer from the bedevilments. If you haven't learned to successfully navigate through life and you're plagued with the things that we're plagued with, guess what? You're going to have the same problems, but you won't seek a lot of help with that because your problems won't get you drunk, loaded, in all kinds of trouble. You just stay miserable. How many people know miserable people? And don't point to anybody beside you. Anybody, you know, like I had this guy's name was Milton. He used to hand out these stickers, and he said, "Go home and put this on your mirror." He says, and he used to say, "You are now looking at the problem." I never got it for the longest time, right? I went home and stuck it on the girlfriend's mirror, right? But it was yeah, we're both looking at the problem. Anyways, moving on. So I need to learn this thing where they talk about in this process is one object is to disclose damage or unsalvageable goods, to get rid of them promptly without regret. If we are going to be successful, we cannot fool ourselves about values. The things that we think are working toward our betterment is actually working toward our demise, but we can't see that. Our belief system, how we handle situations, because we're getting into relationships, I'll talk about certain things here. So we're looking for the common manifestation in the things that have defeated us, the human dilemma of the things that block us off. We need something to apply spiritual principles to, and we need something to see the effectiveness of doing this. So why not better than let's look at resentments, right? This is the number one common manifestation of things that are poisoning us, causing our demise. And we see on page 66 that the purpose of this process is to master resentments, to use it to our betterment instead of our demise, reallocating the energy associated with the resentment and changing how we look at it and moving it in a new direction through prayer, meditation. We see how other people, how they disturb us, how they suffer from the same human condition we do, but they're not adding gasoline to the fire by drinking. Right, their alcoholism is like the gas to the fire. So we're like, our resentments are on steroids, right? Where theirs are natural. Like, you know, most of them will kind of live with their resentment. We'll go burn their house down. Like there's a difference. We'll get drunk and show up at their place, right? Anybody, or just me? Maybe just me. And sometimes, getting drunk was a good thing because it saved you from doing the things you did. Anybody ever do stuff sober? It's like, oh my God. Oh my God, right? And so, anyway, sometimes I was too drunk to carry a lot of stuff out. But now that we're sober, we need to master this energy, how we look at things and people, places, and things and stuff like that. So, as we go along, then they talk about fear, which is interesting. And we see now that it precedes resentments, right? It's it feeds the resentments. But so it's actually fear, right? A threat to one of our better natural instincts, the human instincts, and then we try to create security with people, places, and things, and cause us more problems, right? The more we tried to have our own way, the worse things got. And so on one hand, we could be kind and considerate. Anybody, when we're getting our way, aren't we kind of the most kind and considerate people you ever wanted to meet? When we're not getting our way, we become a little mean, egotistical, right? And punishing. And so people know better. So if you want the nice me, do what I say. If you don't like, right? If you don't want the mean me, then don't do what I don't like. How many people has those natural traits that we used to call assets? Right? The ability to motivate people, I call it. Why am I going through so many relationships? I don't know. So now about the sex inventory, right? Page 68. Going into page 69. I don't know if that was coincidence or divine kind of a joke, right? But, so I have to say, so what's the fastest speed you can go having sex? Is 68 miles an hour, because after that you have to turn around. Anyways, so, okay, I'm sorry. That's the cleanest joke I know. So, okay, moving on. So, when we looked at this thing, we talked about, a lot of us think our strong suit is relationships, but if we a little warped in your thinking or a little skewed in your experience or and stuff like that, we read in page 54 how these underlying things determine how we think, respond, and act. Right? So in this process here, which is interesting, that 16 years prior to actually doing the inventory process, I didn't see this inventory process because I did it the same way Joe and Charlie outlined it. I seen like the problem, and then I seen where it stemmed from, who I hurt, and that was it. But I didn't actually see what was going on, right? So there's two sections to the inventory process, right? On page 69, they talk about the ability to see things. I'm just picking up a pen here. The ability to see things, right? And they talk about, we're not the arbitrators of anyone's sex conduct, right? And that's not the point of it, is how you do sex or what sex you like to do. That isn't the inventory process. The inventory process is it caused you problems and caused other people's problems, and you don't necessarily have to involve another person to have problems in this area, right? And where kind of it talks about my inability to form true partnership with other people, right? And so there's the group of people that says sex and more sex, and then the other group of people who there's a group of people who are always getting in relationships and can't keep them, and then there's another group of people who are so scared of relationships they don't get into them at all. So it's the same kind of thing, right? It robs you, and it all has to do with our thinking and the process. So before I really got into this thing, I always thought I was quite successful at relationships because I was in a lot of them. It didn't click. I have no problem with it. It's like I have no problem getting a job. Why? Yeah, have you had lots of jobs, right? Lots, really. I have no problem in that area because when it was kind of made us worse, right? Like I couldn't see the problem because it was always the people I was involved in. It was never really me. And when it didn't work out because of me, then I'd get into self-loathing because of me. It wasn't them. I never seen their pain or their situation. It was always me. my pain and my situation, right? I was either trying to get rid of somebody or trying to get somebody back, and it was just a very confusing place to be. Or I'd talk myself out of relationships, I'd destroy relationships, or I'd over-engage in things. And so this area was very confusing, especially where I grew up and the people I grew up around. So this area is kind of like we agnostics, right? It's clearing out the old ideas imposed by other people, right? Because a lot of my ideas were imposed by society, by the people I grew up with, by people's ideas. What's a man and all this? So it was very confusing in the era I was raised, because I became a single parent. So I had to become the nurturer, where that wasn't growing up. The man was the guy who provided the food, the place to stay, right? And the money and the house and the food. And it was like, what's your problem? Why are you complaining? There's food in the fridge. Anybody remember that? Food in the fridge and you got a roof over your head. What's your problem? You're ungrateful? Like, so what about all the other stuff? What stuff? Like the nurture. The empathy, care, and concern. Quit your crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Well, that's a good way to start a relationship, right? So anyway, so what they talk about here is the first part, which is really interesting. And you can read through this. And they talk about here where, so we all have sex problems. We reviewed our sex conduct over the past years. This is interesting. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? If you kind of notice, they've switched it around. Before it was, where was I resentful, right? Who am I resentful at? And the instincts of where they originated from, and then where I was selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonest, right? And self-seeking. Then they say, now we're going to look at this from an entirely different angle. So we wrote from left to right, and when we looked at the resentment part, we went from right to left. We seen it was the selfishness, inconsiderate, and dishonesty based on my instincts that involved these other people. Well, that was interesting, right? Because if I was okay in my instincts, then I wouldn't involve these other people. So we see the problem isn't selfish, inconsiderate, and dishonest. That's a symptom of the underlying problem, right? Because I could disguise myself. Look, I'm not being selfish. Look how great. Well, that's the same coin. On one hand, we be kind, considerate, right? And on the other hand, we give, like with most traits, right? We have various traits. So that's why I can't use that as a gauge. I got to look at the underlying, like what's driving me, right? That force. So here they ask me where I had been selfish, right? Selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. Well, this is interesting. So now on my list here, I start meditating all the places I was selfish, dishonest, and all these names and things and people, places, and things come to mind, right? And it may and there's no particular order, but I could have been selfish with. Oh, I remember this situation with Kim. Oh yeah, I was selfish here. And Brenda, or this girl, I can't remember her name, the one with the miniskirt, or, the one I met in the bar here, right? Or the one after hour club, right? Or the one in the bus. So I was thinking, these things that don't sit well with me that come to the surface, and my consciousness is letting me know of past events, of things that I still hate. Porn, growing up, porn. As a young Roman Catholic, the guilt and shame around that stuff, and I'd write that down, right? And so the theater, all these things that I wrote in regards to me, not regards to you. So here, who did I hurt, right? Well, I see I hurt myself, right, by my conduct, and I hurt Kim. But who else was involved? Well, her mom, her dad, her brother, these people who were involved in this situation were indirectly affected because, that was their daughter, that was their son, and then work. And I started seeing this one incident, right, affected a lot of people. So now I started to see why these people were treating me different because of this inconsiderate or selfish or dishonest act that I was at, right? So I'm going out with Kim, but I ended up with Brenda. right? Hurt Kim. Kim goes to her mom, and it goes to everybody. Everybody, now I can't sleep at night. Now I can't go to work the next morning because we're fighting all night. So that one situation, right, of pursuing, right, something had all these people involved. Isn't that interesting? So why did I pursue that? Because of my self-esteem, my security, my ambitions, right? But a lot of it had to do with my self-esteem. That's why I was acting and dealing this way. But I would think, oh, you have a sex problem because you're engaging in these things. But really, I didn't have a sex problem. I had a self-esteem problem. I was trying to build my self-esteem at the expense of other people. So it was like this other one here with Brenda. Well, Brenda wasn't really interested in me. She seen I was going out with Kim, and Kim was very good looking. So if Brenda was able to get my attention, that would build her self-esteem. Right? So really, I'm being used as a pawn to build her self-esteem and build what I think is building my self-esteem, but she wants nothing to do with me. I can't see that because I'm in, right? So I saw how this thing is starting to happen. So I write all that down. And then, and then the stuff like when I was young, then I'm able to adjust. Well, why do I have this? Well, because, that's what I was taught by the church. Is it a correct thought? Is it something that I still want to carry? And it's kind of like, no, I don't want to carry this anymore, right? And then the next one, they talked about we subjected each relationship to the test. So I went back over my life. So one is my conduct, right? The other one is each relationship. So each relationship, I went back with this person or that person that I was in relationship with. Was it a mutual relationship? Even though it was bars and drinking and fighting, all that stuff, we're both mutually in that relationship. And then another relationship I was in, well, why were you in this relationship? Because this person helped me pay for the rent. Big difference, right? Created security. Why were you in this one? Well, because I was trying to get a job through her parents or who so they see a motive. What's my motive for being in there? Right? Well, why are you with this person? Because I don't want to be alone and I don't want them to be with anybody else. I know I'm the only one with that, right? Anybody ever break up with somebody? As long as you're not seeing anybody, you're happy. As soon as they see somebody, you're not happy anymore. Unless you're the first one seeing somebody. You see how warped we are? Right? And the energy and the power around that stuff. You leave them, you cause them pain, but you still want to punish them. You don't want to let them go. So you're checking your phone every 5 minutes after you text them a bombshell or something or pain. Anybody have that kind of? So you see how this stuff really drives and attaches us. So what's the purpose of all this? So as we go down, they talk about where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? Well, you know what? The idea was I shouldn't have did this or I shouldn't have done that. Or I shouldn't have this thought in regards to this situation because it's a learning thing. Everybody goes through this stuff or it was a situation. But it's for you to find peace with this stuff so you can move forward. Because as long as there's stuff from the past you're still carrying, it determines how you respond today and what your relationships look like tomorrow at a subconscious level, right? And some of this stuff takes years. That's like 6 and 7 to really see the full impact of it, right? And so, what's the purpose? It talks about, in this way, we try to shape a sane and sound idea for our future sex life. We subjected each relationship to the test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideas and help us live up to them. Now, there's something interesting. So I'm in my 4th step, but I'm already meditating, asking God for direction, help, and the power to carry that out, the right idea. And then you hear people say, well, you could tell these people who say, the steps are in order for a reason. Now, you can't do step 10, 11 until you finish your 9. They've never done the steps. Because the whole thing is about our relationship with this power, right? And so I'm doing things that I want to do. I'm not doing things that I don't want to do, right? I'm not being driven by my instincts. I'm not being driven by these things that they talk about here. And we'll get down to it. So they talk about, so So we must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm. That means you should be in counsel with your sponsor and people around you before you go seeing that married person again to make amends while their partner's present. Right? Like you got to be careful what you're doing here. So this is the key here. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem, as any other. It's the same recipe, it's the same idea here. So what am I trying? Not only am I trying to create a better understanding of my partnership that I'm looking for with the person of the right idea for me, regardless of what that looks like, but it's also in a relationship with everybody around me. Right? My kids, my parents, society, all the same idea, right? How is my instincts interfering with creating the life that I'm looking for? Well, isn't that interesting? So we could expound on why do you say that? Because it talks about who did we hurt? Well, I didn't have any sexual relationship with Kim's mom or dad, but my conduct created a problem with my relationship with them. Right? What did it affected their instincts? What they talked about earlier. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, so my symptoms are disturbing them by the treatment of the person I'm involved with, and they're retaliating, and I'm wondering what their problem is. So when I was in earlier recovery, it was kind of like I was young when I got here. Like, I spent most of my time trying to get sober, so I'd end up in different relationships in recovery, right? And when I got sober last time, like life was going good, I'd end up with relationships with people who were also new in recovery, right? And what that started doing was causing problems in my home group. Why? Because people weren't minding their own business. No, because no. But the problem was I started seeing how my conduct was causing me problems, right? And then it was kind of like, but I never seen it at the time, right? So doing big book workshops, I have a responsibility how I conduct myself. But I never seen it till I seen the inventory that sometimes people come into our fellowship. And it's like a woman going to a new bar. They'd hook up with somebody for security or the most popular person, and it would just be attracted to them, right? And so my position of doing big book studies would attract a lot of people, right? So they weren't attracted necessarily to me, but my position that they thought I held or I represented. As look at Tony's well liked, blah, blah. So I'm going. If I could get closer, then I'll be well liked, and I'll build myself. So I didn't see that, right? So once I seen it, it was up to me how I conducted myself, and that's up like with this stuff, right? That's what this whole inventory is about. So it doesn't cause me problems or the people around me problems, but you need to be able to see it. And sometimes the only time you see things is when you start experiencing pain or retribution by people, places, and things around you. Sometimes the people around you make more comments about your conduct than you do. Anybody? Right. And so that's the social thing. It's I don't know why I went there, but I went there. So what happens is, as they talk about here, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. So we're learning how to meditate here in the fourth step. So this situation with Kim, you know what, like, or with this the women in recovery, you know what, I need to watch how I conduct myself. I need to not date anybody in my home group or that comes to the big book study. I can't do it. I can't do it now, right? I got to, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of like I got to watch what's their motive. Not only my motive, what's their motive. So isn't that interesting, right? So then these specific matters. So what happens is, on the next page, which is really cool, is, listen, God alone can be judge of our sex situation. Counsel with another person is often desirable. But we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. That means if you haven't had that experience, mind your own business. Right? Because there's a lot of people in AA who will give you advice on things they weren't able to achieve themselves. Right? There's people that have been sober a while and they'll go to no relationships, no this, that. Well, I always ask people, say, how did you do in your first, when you were this sober? When you were 6 months sober, how were you? How was your conduct? What were you doing? Oh, you don't like to talk about that, eh? It's experience, strength, and hope. So you mean to tell me you're watching that I should be without a relationship while you were seeing a married person? Oh, okay. It's like, oh, wait a minute. What's your experience around this, right? So that's what that's kind of saying, right? Suppose we fall short of the chosen idea and stumble. This is interesting. So it's kind of like, well, I don't want to engage in this conduct anymore, and I don't want to engage in this conduct anymore, and I don't want to watch this level of porn anymore. I want to change how I view and see. I don't want to go to strip clubs anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's my thing for where I was in sobriety. So say if I fall short of that idea, well, then I regroup. And I claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, because that situation in itself will punish me spiritually. I'll feel it, right? I'll feel, because most of my conduct's based on how I feel and my response in that situation, where another person could be fine with that, where I'm not. Like when a bunch of us went to Vegas for my friend's bachelor party, they were all going to the topless pools, the bars. I didn't go. I said it wasn't for me, but my buddies felt quite comfortable doing that. It wasn't for me, right? For reasons that they talk about here, right, later. So they talk about here, does this mean we're going to get drunk? Does this mean we're going to... Some people tell us so, but this is only half truth. It depends on us and our motives. Very important. If we are not sorry for what we have done, that means if our conduct's hurting other people, or we're exploiting people, or hurting people, or being exploited, and we allow ourselves that for to continue, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. And the insanity of alcohol returns. If I'm engaged in things that cause me guilt, shame, and remorse continuously, and I'm not trying to curb that or change that or alter that, then I'm going to be in trouble, because this is my inventory on the things that cause me spiritual angst or spiritual discomfort or emotional shame, guilt, and remorse. Yet anybody? Am I alone in this? No, right? And you don't even have to involve other people to experience shame, guilt, and remorse. Well, you don't have to put up your hand there, right? So we'll move on. Okay. If we're not sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things. Notice we're not working on ourselves here, right? We're not working on ourselves. We're asking for direction and strength, right? And when we fall short of it, we're asking for help. So here's the recipe that a lot of us miss. Take us to better things. We believe we'll be forgiven and we have learned our lesson in regards to how we caused ourselves that discomfort. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, including ourselves, we are sure to drink. We're not theorizing. These are facts out of our own experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right idea, right? Put it down, the right idea. For guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge, when to yield would mean heartache. And that's self-explanatory. Right? it's just like, it's just like, it's like anything. It's like a relapse. It's like a diet, going to the kitchen, eating the whole cake, it's whatever. Even though in the moment you think it's causing you pleasure, but then it causes you guilt, shame, and remorse. Trying to quit smoking, you have a smoke, all that stuff. The aftermath is the drive that gets you back to that, and then what the guilt that follows after that. And this is the same kind of area. And what we're trying to do is not work on ourselves, is we're trying to bring God into it. Right? So, after 16 years of sobriety, I was experiencing a lot of self-inflicted pain, but I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't get where it was coming from. And I was probably 15 years sober. And I was doing the Joe and Charlie sheets, and I thought, I'm missing something here. I'm like, because this new freedom and new happiness doesn't seem to be happening in this area. So I really got back into it, and this is after doing like 16 years of workshops, but I was doing it the way somebody else taught me how to do it. I was doing it the way Joe and Charlie and mainstream speakers did it. I never did it. So what happened is I became blind to what the book was saying because of what I was taught, right? And so what happens is I opened the book and I said, God, give me a new set of eyes to look at this, right? So I started looking at it. I thought, isn't this interesting? There's two sets here. One is for the guilt, remorse, and all this conduct, and the other one's for the relationships. And out of that, it's asking me to shape a sound idea for the future. I've never done that. I've never written out a sane idea for the future. So it says, okay, so I've seen these things that were causing me problems in the past. Well, what created these problems? Self-esteem, lack of insight, lack of exploring, lack of walking in their world and seeing what I was getting involved in. I seen this was what was causing me my problem. So what was I doing was I was buying most of the cars on how they looked, not how they ran. I don't know how else to say that, right? And then once I got involved in it, was causing, oh my God, there's some stuff seriously wrong with these things and me, right? So I wrote out this list and I said, this is what so I took the best relationships that I had of everybody, the best quality out of the relationships that I had with all the people in my life, and I made a list of this is what I'd like in my relationship. So I had this list of things, qualities, attributes, values, belief systems, right, that I would really enjoy as the ideal partner. So I wrote them all out, and then my sponsor said, what now you got to become these things in order to attract them. Wow, that was interesting. So what that meant was, if I'm looking for a 5-star experience, I can't be going through a drive-through anymore. So what that kind of means is, our family and events sometimes will have big dinners, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and how the preparation for that, and it's going to be huge, right? Everybody's getting involved. You smell it, and everybody's getting involved, and and they're getting ready for the big meal, the big extravaganza, right? And everybody's cooking involved. Nobody's eating. And you get to the table and you're hungry, and when you sit there, you get to enjoy the aroma, you get to enjoy the whole experience, as everybody else is, because they've been waiting in anticipation for this. We're going to Mom's tonight, better not eat, because there's going to be a big meal, right? But if you stopped off and had some chicken McNuggets, or a Wendy's, whatever the situation, you drive through, right, with the extra large fries and extra shake, right, and then when you get to the event that you're unable to participate at the same level, and everybody sees it. Everybody sees you're missing the same event. So it's kind of like, well, this is what I want in my relationships, where I was at in my life and my sobriety. And my daughter at the time was saying, Dad, why don't you have a relationship? Because I was raising my kids and not have a relationship, but not any that she was involved in, right? That was because I was okay with that part of it, just acquaintances and people to spend time with. But I was still lonely in acquiring the level of relationships that I wasn't having. So I wrote it out. So that meant for 3 months, I prayed, God, give me the strength to do the right thing. So I'd get an old phone call, and she, hi, and I'd be, this must be God, your will for me, God. And God's like, no, it's not, right? And I felt a little bit of anxiety. So I'd go to my home group, or I'd go help out, or phone a sponsee. I would go change. So somewhere along the line, I kind of was with this idea, no more fast food, right? So I had to be really disciplined about the idea. That way, when I met my partner, I know they'd be looking for the same experience, because we'd both be attracted to that. So 3 months, actually, this is the first time in my sobriety, I went a year without any kind of relationship or any involvement with another person as I did this stuff. And that was just happened. I never set out to do that. It's just the way it happened, right? So I went to, I was having this spiritual kind of angst this day, and I asked for some direction. And someone said, hey, go to the 5:30 meeting, right? I haven't been there in years, and it was in White Rock. Someone said, go there, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to hop on my bike. I hopped on, and then the phone rang, and it was one of my exes. And I'm thinking, maybe this is, and something, I just knew inside, something said, no, don't go that way. Get on your bike, go to this meeting. So I said, I don't know why I'm going to this meeting. So I said, you want me to go to the meeting? I'll go to the meeting. Sometimes you don't have to know why, you just have to get the marching orders. So I hopped on my bike, I rode there, and I run into my buddy. He just passed away. God rest his soul. He had an accident. But we got talking. He says, let's go for dinner. So I said, sure. We went to White Rock. We went to the boathouse. We're having dinner. And I told him what was going on in my life, the inventory process, the right idea, and all that other stuff. And he says, it was Saturday night, and I used to go to the mountain highway where all the young people go, right? All the young single people go there, right, to meet whatever this, like the singles bar or something like that, but it's disguised as an AA meeting. So some of you know you have those meetings in your neighborhood, right? So he says, why don't we go to the Punjabi meeting? Now, I didn't want to go to the Punjabi meeting. I wanted to go to this other meeting. But sometimes God works indirectly through people, right? So I said, okay, I'll go to this. He says, let's go to, I'll meet you at the Starbucks coffee shop on this road, and this road is about 20 minutes from here. It says, I'll meet you there. So as I'm going through the valley, it's a clear sunlit, starlit night, and I start having a heart-to-heart with God, right? I'm driving my Harley, I'm flying down there, and the wind's happening. And I said, God, if this is your will for me, is these relationships, could you make the next one a lot less painful, because I can't take it anymore. And I remember I was having a heart-to-heart with God, and I'm crying, tears are running down my eyes. Like I said, there's got to be a better experience, right? These people talk about these experiences. I'm not having it. And this is the first time I did, like people call it a surrender, but it's the first time I went to God, okay, God, I seen how I can do, right? Let's see how you can do. I said, let's see what you got. That's what I said to God, honest to God. I said, let's see what you got, right? So I drove to the Starbucks, and this lady pulled up in the car, and she went walking by, and I went, wow. I said, what's the matter? You don't say hello anymore? Right? I acted like I knew her, right? So she went into the video store. She was returning videos. It was Saturday night. She came walking out, and she was going to do a test to see what kind of guy I was, right? So she says, as she came by, I stood up and talked. I went into Starbucks, grabbed a card and put my name on it and all that. And she goes, oh, I got somebody waiting at home. I said, lucky guy. Thank you for saying hello. And I backed off, right? I wasn't going to be the dog that I used to be, right? I said, lucky guy. Like, I hope you have a good night, right? She said, no, it's my mom. She's not feeling well. I'm watching videos with her tonight. I said, well, in that case, here's my number. Here's a card. This is redeemable for a coffee of your choice in my presence anywhere in the Lower Mainland, right? So it took her 2 weeks to call me, which is, I already had the U-Haul picked out for the next day, but 2 weeks later she calls me. We go on a date, like a coffee, and we see if we're both compatible in our belief system and all that stuff. Right? And then we did a date and all that other stuff. So where I'm going with this is I attracted the person that God put in my life. Right? My own thinking nearly sabotaged that, but it took another person to see, it took a married person for me to be convicted, to have the conviction of staying in that relationship that I was going to destroy because of my old thinking. I was going to talk myself out of happiness again based on old ideas. And he was able to point that I had to work through that. So my wife, at the time we were dating, worked through that. And she, my idea of stuff was, if you don't like it, you know where the door is. Or, here, let me go get you some boxes because you can't carry this shit out by yourself. She goes to me, I can't believe this. Right? We're dating. She's sitting in my living room. We're dating for, she goes, you're not very good at relationships, are you? I said, what? She says, your communication styles and the way you communicate, not very effective, is it? No one's ever said that. I said, pardon me. She goes, I did a bit of research, and she had this binder. I still got it with tabs in it. It was like a binder with tabs. She goes, these are all from credible sources on how to effectively communicate. She goes, I've got 16 points here to help us have a better relationship, right? That I think we should go over. And I'm looking at her, and I said, what planet are you from, right? I said, what's the matter with you? I said, there's something seriously wrong. And I got up and left, right? Well, I'm happy to report, 17 years later, we've covered 15 of those items, and we're working on the 16th one. It's a continuation thing. But to be open to the idea that's being presented here, that's where this started. This is the idea. Doesn't mean you achieve, right? And so what we do in our relationship is we both have a sane and sound idea on how we want our relationship to look and where we're going. So even if you're in a relationship that isn't working well, you both can write a sane and sound idea what you want things to look like and be willing to move toward. So one of the things that when we talk about anything is that we don't swear when we're talking. And I watch the energy level, right? And this carries over into step 11 of where it talks about reviewing our day and where we fell short of the mark, where we kind, loving, and toward all, right? What could we have done different? What could we have done instead? What corrective measures can I take to bring about the desired relationship? So we're married, 16 years, 17 years now, and God's the basis of our relationship. And we're both willing to continuously move toward the right idea. So if we have something that doesn't that causes either one of us some anxiety, we make an appointment with each other. Especially hard topics like money or family or things that would step on the toes or cause instinct-based reactions, right? And so what happens is that we'll make an appointment with each other and we'll talk about it, right? And so one of the things where this turns into 11 is where the right idea and being able to work toward it and falling short of the mark. See, step 4 is the foundation for step 11, right? And so what I mean by that, it's a continuation. There's no stopping. There's no lull, right? Like I'm in this driver's seat now. I'm asking God to power the vehicle and move it in the right direction. Lack of power will always be my dilemma. But I'm steering where the car goes, and I'm asking for direction to go in the right way. God's not steering the bus, right? I'm still have domain over my will, Where do I want my will to go? What do I want my life to look like? I have two alternatives. It could be Tony's way, or inquiring what God's will is for me. What is it going to be today? Oh, I'm going to do it my way. Oh, pain. Ow, 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 ow. Okay, well, did you want to do it this? Yes, being convinced I'm going to do it this way. So one of the things was when it came to money, she would ask, like, for to meet some responsibilities in homeowner insurance, and I would get upset, right? Because of my own instincts or my own ambitions, security, and it would come across like I was getting angry at her, and it would cause her anxiety, even though I said I wasn't getting mad at her, and I'd swear at the situation, but now she has anxiety when she's going to talk to me, and I didn't like I never liked the feeling when we're dating of me doing anything that causes her angst or pain or anguish. I don't like that. So when I did my inventory, I seen that I get this energy before these things are happening, and what I don't do is correct it. What I do is try to keep it squashed. I try to contain it, and I can't contain it. And energy has to go through somewhere, and she'd get the brunt of it. So when I did the inventory on what I could have done different, what's the right idea, I sat down with her. I said, look, I struggle in this area, and I'd like some help walking through this. And if you're willing to walk with me through this, I'll watch what I do now and conduct myself differently. But I need the experience of getting through it. And then if I find myself having a moment, could we stop and pray? Can I acknowledge that I'm having this, and could we make another appointment? And so years later, now she says, I just write her a check. No nans, ands, nothing. Just here you go. If I have it, here you go. Goes toward the house funds, this or that or whatever. And I think that's the beauty of this thing, is you start to define what your relationship looks like at any time in your sobriety. You can start over again. And the last part of the inventory here is we've covered everything. So we've covered resentments. We've covered fear. We've covered conduct, correct and incorrect conduct, selfishness, and all these. We've covered these things. We have a good idea. So at the bottom here, they talk about we've listed people we've hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten these matters, straighten out the past if we can. So on my inventory process, there was a lot of people that wasn't on my list that I hurt. They weren't on my resentments. They weren't on my fears. They weren't on my sex conduct. They were indirectly people that I hurt through my conduct. So I made a separate list of people that I hurt, meaning the bar fight I got into, knocked this guy's teeth out, or the fight I got in here, or the fight I got in there, the fight I got in with this other person, or the police, and my conduct in society, urinating on things, spitting on people. It just went on and on and on, knocking out windows, running on people's cars. I thought, oh my God, the mayhem I caused that somebody else would have to pay for, right, and stuff like that. The child support I didn't pay here, this or that, right? And so I made a list of all these things that were still in my conscious that came to the surface. I just made a list of those things, and I prayed for direction on that. And then later when we talk about our nines, we'll talk about that. So, again, what's the whole purpose of this thing? This is the whole purpose of the 4-step. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Tapping into this power. We hope, those who put this together, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. What are the self-wills? The resentment, the fears, the harm, and conduct. These are the self-wills that block us off from God. These are the things we harbor, right, that create those emotional blocks. When harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. So anything that causes these angst or energy blocks or these feelings, regardless, we're just giving you the common manifestation. There's a whole list of things that cause me angst. Today I don't go, what's going on here? I'm feeling this anxiety. This instinct. This I better bring God into it. right? This is where I learned how to do that. So, if you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, what are the grosser handicaps? The resentment, fears, conduct, and harm, right? You've made a good beginning. That being so, you swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. How you're driven by these things based on your self-esteem, right? Your ambitions, your security, how your instincts are driving you, and how you're over-demanding or causing these people around you problems, which in turn cause you problems. Oh my God, that's the part of the unmanageability. When I'm driven by hundreds of forms of fear and self-delusion, I'm going to make decisions based on self that are going to invite people who are minding their own business. Right? And see, big part of my inventory is people who are minding their own business. And I involve them. You're sitting there. And then a part of that inventory is how people did the same thing to me. So I see this human merry-go-round, roller coaster, the elements of life. Right? We all take turns. And if I can find a way of sidestepping these landmines and grenades that I lob at other people, if I can find a way of detachment from all these things and finding more harmony, how I live with the people around me will be directly proportionate to my relationship with a power greater than me. This is the beginning of that road. This is the chiseling of these things. And God becomes the hammer and the chisel. I'm just kind of, so what gets revealed is like, I'm not too sure if it was Michelangelo, a big sculpture. He looks at this rock and he said, how did you get that sculpture out of there? He says, I just took away the parts that weren't supposed to be there. Right? And that's where we're carrying things that are not supposed to be there, that are determining the beauty of the beautiful thing that we are as human creatures. Like we're the greatest, one of the greatest things that happen here on earth. It's really a marvel when you think how we are here and how we're functioning and what we've achieved and what we're doing and how we are as a species, right? And how we're having this human experience, this spiritual experience. But it's also devastating how we continue. So the world, when you kind of look at it, the world's directly proportionate of a magnified human being. Every problem in the world is directly proportionate to the individual struggles that we have as humans on a more global scale. And that's mind-boggling. So when the consciousness of the world changes, so does how the world looks. Right? And the same with us. As our consciousness change, our world changes with people, places, and things. And when the things happen that aren't so great, we see it's actually the absence of God now and the absence of consciousness that all these things are happening, and they'll continue to happen. So as people, as we become more conscious, we encourage the people around us to become more conscious. Right? As they start experiencing the promises because they start seeing another element that's happening with us, it becomes attractive that they pursue. So my wife pursues spiritual principles on a lot bigger scale through the demonstration of the life that I live, and same with my kids. Right? I don't have to talk it. They just know that there's something at work here that they see in the people around us. There's an element of when we walk into a room and it's a solution-oriented meeting, you just feel the electricity in that room. Yes? Anybody? And you walk into a room where there's sadness and you feel the absence of the connection. Right? And so what happens is I'll close with this idea, is this is how we think, though. We think we hear people say, let's pray, invite God into the situation. When technically we're praying to acknowledge God's already here. Big difference in thinking, right? If God's already here, my job is to acknowledge the presence of and the access to this thing. If I need to invite God into something, that means he's absent. Right? Anyways, I enjoyed today. Live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. And we'll close with a great meditative prayer for those that wish. We'll close with the third step prayer. It's a pretty powerful prayer. It starts off with an idea on the hope of achieving, and the confirmation of these ideas are demonstrated and lived through as we go through it in step 11. It says we're now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, all in capitals. May I do thy will always. We thought well before taking this step, making sure we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. You guys can unmute, and we'll have a discussion if you want. If not, that's okay too.